Uh-oh.
Mute your computer. That's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Wait, but then...
Like, just mute your volume on the computer. So, like, keep your mic on.
Okay.
We got it.
We'll get this figured out one way or the other.
Like, I've never done this before. I have. It's just been a really long time. And StreamYard always messes with me. So, anyway, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Just hanging in there.
Yeah. How's the start to the new year so far?
I mean, we started it off sick. We got really sick around Christmas time, and it was like a 2-weeker, and we're just now starting to feel good. But since we started to feel good, it's been great, so I can't complain. What about you?
Yeah. Honestly, like, it's been really nice because I'm on break from school right now. So, the nice thing about that is that I'm not having to juggle so many things at one time. I've been really surprised at how much I struggle being okay with time. I feel bad having downtime. So that's kind of showed me that that's what I need to work on this year. Like, is just being okay with just like having time for myself and taking breaks and taking time to rest because it's obviously needed because of everything I juggle and stuff. Because I tend to just go, and then I just will crash. Like after 8 weeks or so, and then I don't want to do anything. It's a really bad habit, or pattern, I should say, not necessarily a habit. But I've got out of school. My break started December 16th, and I still don't go back until January 23rd. So I've had like a really nice long break from school. So that's been really cool to get extra time with the kids and just extra time with fiance and time to do this and all of that. So it's good.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that about like learning how to rest because I'm kind of in the same boat. And this has been, I don't have as long of a break, but like there was like the 2 weeks where I was like resting and like my body, like I had to because I was sick and my kid was sick and it was like I had to. And I was like, what if this was just okay? What if this is just where I'm at? I'm like you talked about like making yourself like almost sick and like crashing and not being able to do all this stuff. And the funny thing is this year I have one who like picks a word of the year every year and she picked still. And when I read that, I was like, I'm stealing that. That's going to be my word of the year. So maybe you can grapple with that one too.
Yeah.
Maybe we all.
That's kind of, it's funny. That's kind of in a way what I don't necessarily do a word of the year, but I do kind of like a focus for my year. And last year, it was being about more present in the moment. Not because I did like my entire adult life so about like really has been so about like what future and like the future. It's been so like future forward thinking that I've missed so many moments just in the moment. And that it was really this past summer because I started school in the summer of 2021. And that semester was just like so rough because that's kind of like your weed out semester. And I just kind of allowed school to rob me of so much time with the kids, especially. And when this next summer in 2022 came around, I was just like, you know, because I had to have straight A's. Like I had this mindset of it, and it's just like, why? As long as I'm getting the grades that I need to get my degree, nobody's going to care about my GPA is like nobody's going to care. So I completely shifted my priorities so I didn't neglect school. But it's like, you know what, if I don't get to start studying until 9:30 after all the kids are down, then that's fine. Like, it just is what it is. That means I make a couple pieces and that is what it is. But my kids are in that age where like they're old enough to where like we can do fun stuff together. And they're not quite old enough where they still want to spend it with their dad. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like I don't have much more summers where it's like it's not cool to not hang out with dad, not hang out with mom, or we do stuff as family. I only have a couple more years to go. It's not cool with them anymore. So I was just like, that's really what shifted it for me, where I saw how much better it did for my mental health, and just I felt like such a much better dad. Just being able to just put everything aside and just be in the moment. So I just carried that through to the end of the year. So it kind of goes along with still, honestly, just being still and just being present in where you're at.
Yeah, I love that you were able to do that and like sort of catch it before it was too late, like you said, and not be like I always think about like my grandpa who's 90 and he's now like for the last probably like 10 years with Greg, and I really wish I would have acknowledged that I had kids. Like he was providing, but like then they're old and they don't care about you and they're gone and they live, they care about you, but like how amazing that it's really hard to be able to do that, especially like in this world that we live in, and just being able to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Prioritize.
I totally agree.
Still doing this amazing thing for yourself and for others and for, whatever's driving you to pursue this degree and everything, but just knowing that like these kids are growing.
For sure.
Melissa's asking if there's an echo. So I'm wondering if there's anything else we need to troubleshoot to fix the echo.
I can put my headphones on so that way there's no audio coming out of anything. I don't know if that will help. I hope at least one of us does that. But I feel for them, definitely.
We'll try. This is our first time live together, and we're live on more than one platform. So we're just kind of like, wait, I think this is our first live together. I don't know. But thanks, Melissa, for pointing that out. And hi, Lavender. I don't know if you're still here. Lindsay, your audio is a bit off. Okay. I can try to grab my headphones as well. I don't know if that will help. And I also don't know where they are. But let's see. Let's get Trey hooked up, and then we'll see if I need to fix it too. But also, if it's not like horrible, we'll probably just push through. Hi, Calvin. Okay, are you back?
Almost.
Oh, no. I think Trey is frozen on TikTok. You have an echo. Oh, great. Okay, they're saying it's my... Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay. Back-ish.
Am I frozen on your screen on TikTok? Because I am on mine.
Oh. On my screen on TikTok. You know what? We probably just could adjust on TikTok and it would have been a lot simpler. Okay. Is the echo still there, or is because I had it set on my laptop, but now I have to look at one and that light is like really bright.
I may have to start my TikTok live over.
Yeah, we can restart the TikTok.
I'm going to do that real quick. So guys, if y'all can hear me, I'm going to shut this off and restart it on TikTok. We're trying to go live on like everywhere at one time, and it's the first time we've ever done this, so just bear with us.
We're going to try it.
I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we can get him back here in just a second. Thanks everybody who's hanging out for bearing with us.
Hey, the nice thing
we're just trying to figure this out.
Cut all of this first crap out.
Here we go.
Okay.
Yay!
Yes. Okay. Okay, cool. Well, since we're this is the first time we've gone live together, I think. So I know I would really like, if you're okay with it, I would kind of love to hear you tell a little bit of your story, just so that way any of like the people in my life that have not seen you or been exposed to like this content before, because your story is pretty incredible, and it's interesting. We've just read this several times how similar our stories are. So I would just kind of love for you to share that, and for anybody that's on like my line, she can't see your questions, but if you want to pop questions in my chat, then I can relay them back to her. And same thing for like YouTube and Facebook. Like I'll post questions for both of us. Pretty much Lindsay's story, like, is my story. Just girl version and guy version. So y'all please ask us questions. That's kind of why we're here. So I'd love to just have you share your story if you're open to it.
It's funny because as soon as you asked me that, I was like, wow, I haven't been asked that. I haven't done a live with anyone or anything like that for a while. So I was like, oh, that feels weird.
Out there.
You know, I've been interviewing other people for my podcast like you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my turn. So I was married to a man for about 6 years. We had a child together. I came out, I left the marriage, pretty quickly started dating another queer person who lived in town. It was my first queer relationship. It moved very quickly. It was toxic very early on, although I didn't really understand it at the time. I remember early on thinking like this person just needed modeled like healthy like love and forgiveness, and I was just like doing all this stuff, and we were together for 2.5 years, and I experienced pretty much all the kinds of abuse that exist, and I finally left at the end of 2021 and went no contact and let to like really just sever that tie. And I already had a following on TikTok and Instagram when I left. I think I had like 18,000 followers on Instagram and like 30,000 on TikTok. And so a lot of people on Instagram knew about my relationship. They knew my abuser. They knew who they were, what they looked like, which was good and bad. I think it made it like really difficult to come out and say, hey, everybody. So you know how I was like sharing my life?
Just kidding.
Not exactly how I said it was.
Yeah.
Which, feels really vulnerable because I'm like, I'm going to lose 18,000 followers because I look like a liar at this point. I look like a fraud. But come to find, my account took off when I started sharing my truth. And a lot of people were like, yeah, I saw it. I could see it in their facial expressions. I could see it in their body language. I could see it in yours and all of that stuff. So, I started sharing more, and my account grew, and I started making connections with all of you in our group of creators who are trying to help people, and now here we are.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting how other people that really don't even know you, just like even know like what we feel like we're putting like the best foot forward, because everybody has the best of the best out on social media and stuff in general, and it's interesting that people were still able to see it. And I think that really I think that goes for most people's stories in this, is that a lot of people can, when I left my relationship, I was shocked how many people were like, yeah, like they just kind of, they knew something was up. Or, well, yeah, we kind of were suspicious anyways of just this and this. And it's just like, well, somebody could have told me. Just kidding. Just like, I wouldn't have listened anyways at the time. But it was just kind of like, that was my initial reaction. Was like, why didn't you say anything? But we know it wouldn't matter, even if they did. So it is interesting. You can see it.
Yeah, and it is really hard. And just like you said, because a lot of people ask, like, what can I do if my friend or my sibling is being abused? And the answer is very, very difficult because, like you said, I had the same thing happen. I had people say, oh, I knew they were abusive. Someone had told me X, Y, Z, or I witnessed this or something like that. And I remember I was with friends in Spain, and I got up, walked into the bathroom, and like screamed. And I was like, how could you not tell me that? Like, here's my innocent child. I live 3 blocks away from you. You never thought, well, no. And the reality is that if someone had asked me, if someone had like, cornered me at the gym and been like, are you really okay? Because I'm watching you lose yourself over the past like year or so. You've been just like, I don't recognize you anymore. Are you okay? I'd have been like, like you just, when you're in it, you can't necessarily tell the truth, and you don't really know how, and you're afraid to. Yeah. And, I just talked about this with someone the other day about like if you do share something with someone and then you don't leave immediately, which you most of the time don't because that's not how these situations work, then you stop talking to that person because you're like, well, now I'm an idiot.
Right.
I look like I overreacted, or I look like it's my fault because I'm choosing to stay. It's just so complicated.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a level of shame that comes with that initial acceptance first that we avoid for so long. At least that's how it was for me, because I had several family members specifically just be like, they did a good job like expressing concerns without just like flat out coming out and saying, we don't think this is good, like blah blah blah. But I just couldn't accept that they were right. And I probably because like I'm stubborn and I'm a Taurus through and through. And I just really, really wanted to prove them wrong. And I know that that's really terrible, but it's kind of not, because it's like I wanted to be right about this so long. And there was so much embarrassment that was coming from that initial acceptance. But it's kind of like, we hear it when we talk about like, or people talk about substance abuse or just any kind of change that you want to make. You have to admit that there's an issue there first, before you can even make the steps forward. And I think that first initial step of acceptance and admitting that there is, like, we're not happy as much as we want to be, as much as we wish that we were, and as hard as we're trying, like, we're not, and that's hard to admit.
Very hard. Yeah. And then we have that added layer of, like you said, like my kid just came in and grabbed a piece of chocolate. Can you close the door, buddy? Like he just opened the door, I waved, and he's like, I'm just kidding. The chocolate. Relatable.
My kind of guy.
I know. We talk about that added layer of like just wanting to, you just said it. You said something like, because you want it to work so badly when you're, and that's part of why we're here tonight, is to talk about our support group that's coming up. And someone actually asked about it, so we'll scroll back to that in a second. But when you come out later in life and then you just dive into this queer relationship that you so desperately, like, you didn't even know that that's what you were kind of like hoping for and what was missing and all of that stuff, or that's how it feels. And then you're in it and you're like, this is absolute crap. But I also like dove in head first and I really want this to work. And it's just this whole added layer of difficulties when it comes to getting out.
Yeah. And someone commented on my TikTok, I said, you feel embarrassed because you also know what you're putting up with. And I think that's so freaking true. Because, when sometimes even when I talk about what I went through, I get like, I shake my head. I'm just like, and I have to remember, I'm a very different person now than I was back then. Like, I mean, and granted, it's only been about, I don't know, maybe 3 years or so. It'll be 3 years this May. And I'm not the same person. Like, now I know that it's okay to be alone. Like, and I mean, obviously now I'm engaged, but that was like my biggest fear, was just like ending up alone. It was my biggest fear of just, like you said, going through this coming out process later in life after being previously married and having kids, and overall like having like a picture perfect life before coming out. I mean, I didn't have an unhappy relationship, and it's like, well, I could have just, stayed in there really and just stayed in this situation, as opposed to coming out and doing all of this, and then now I end up here, and now I have to admit that this is where I ended up after all of this. Like, there was a lot of shame that was associated with all of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Whew.
But what was the comment that you got about the support group?
We got, what's the LGBT? What's that?
Check YouTube comments really quick.
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
Okay.
I'm just not really sure, like, Oh, easy peasy.
Yeah,
here we go.
Easy fix.
Do do you have any control over like, can you click on anything?
I don't think I can. No, because you're the host.
Oh, cool. I have a lot of power. I'm not sure. Some of these I'm like not 100% sure about, but yeah, there was one that we just blocked. So
yeah.
Okay. What's the LGBTQIA plus support group event? Like, what's it going to be about? Do you want to go ahead and answer that one?
So essentially, the whole goal of the support group is for there to just be a safe place for queer survivors specifically, and the reason why is because us being a part, like both Lindsay and I being part of the queer community, we understand that there's a certain level of toxicity in our community that's just accepted as normal. And so part of the goal with the support group for us is that we want people to understand, like, the rules don't have to be different just because we're in the queer community when it comes to what you should and shouldn't accept from people. And that the toxicity that's been normalized by some of the community, not all of the community by any means, but there has been a level of that that's normalized in the community, that we shouldn't have to accept. But the other part of it is that it's just a safe place where we can all talk about our experiences, and there's certain things that we don't have to explain because we're part of the same community. I know I get very nervous sometimes being, and I don't know why I still feel this way. I shouldn't, but there is still a level of nervousness when I'm around people that aren't a part of the queer community, just because of the, we get a lot of hate as it is. So sometimes people don't feel safe going into a support group that's maybe open to like everyone, which those are extremely important, and we're very pro those too. But I've had people say to me specifically, because they know I'm part of the queer community, that I want to be in a support group, and I tried, but like also don't want to be judged by that part of it too. So this is just makes it an even safer space. Any support group for abuse survivors is a safe space, or at least it should be. But there's like another layer of it being a safe space by keeping it a part of that community, so that way we can express more on those shared experiences too. So it is a true support group in that aspect.
Well, yeah, and like even having even knowing that you're in a place where people are going to use your pronouns, the pronouns of your abuser or your current partner or whatever, and not make assumptions, and just having that level of like the queer safety net, I think is really nice. Because I mean, I have that experience like when I go see, like I can remember when I went to see my primary care physician, whatever, after I had been like dating this whole other person that's a completely different gender from my husband, and like she knew me as this person, like this mom with a guy who had a kid. And I remember like being like, and she was great. And now she knows, of course, that I was abused in that relationship, and like she's been amazing. But like it is really scary for us. There's that added layer of being like, can I trust this provider? Can I trust this person who's I don't know, giving me my driver's license, like whatever, like if it comes up, like there's things like that where we have you.
Yeah.
We're catching you.
Yeah. It's just a level of comfortability, really. I mean, because we've talked about it. We know that there's support groups out there, and I've had the privilege of speaking at a couple of them before, and they're great. Like it's not that needs not being met, but I know that for a lot of times when domestic violence or abusive relationships are thought of, it is very much thought about in that traditional setting where a man is being abusive towards a woman. And the reality is that abuse doesn't discriminate. It doesn't discriminate in any kind of orientation. It doesn't discriminate in any kind of gender. It also doesn't, even in hetero relationships, it's not always the man abusing the woman. It's flipped a lot as well. I get a lot of those survivors that reach out to me as well too. Just even though I'm talking about being abused by a man, it's just the fact that they're like, I'm just glad to hear a guy's talking about this as well, because you don't hear about that, and it's kind of the same thing. We don't we don't hear our voice being represented a lot in this aspect. So that's another reason why we wanted to partner together and do this as well. But mainly for the safety aspect, for sure.
Yeah.
What would you feel like was your biggest takeaway, like on your healing journey? Like, what was one of your biggest aha moments that you had?
I think I'm going to give two. One of them was that when I realized that I was in a trauma bond and it wasn't love, they didn't love me, they didn't love my child. It's weird because on one hand, like a lot of us would feel like that's about us and that says something about us. And there is that little something we're like, well, why couldn't they love me? Well, there's a lot of people that aren't going to love you. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so I think that helped me to get out, and that helped me a lot in my healing to be like, they simply did not love me and I did not love them. And it was just a thing. And it helped me to move forward versus like when you're stuck in that, like, well, did they love me? Did I love them? I don't know. This is complicated. That answer, that puzzle piece really helped me. Because a trauma bond is not the same as love. And again, when I started reading, like there was like a side-by-side comparison, literally checked every box for the trauma bond and not one for love. I was like, this is clear as day. I cannot deny this. Like embarrassing. And then the other thing was that this was their problem, not mine.
Yeah.
And so like, yes, as survivors, like when we get into these kinds of like relationships, obviously I talk a lot about healing and like getting back your hobbies, and I travel a lot and, you know, rekindling relationships. So there is a lot that is on us, which we didn't ask for from our childhood, from whatever. And we do need to heal. We do need to take that time to learn about abuse and what it looks like and to heal those wounds that we have that sort of made this possible without making that, like, I don't like to say that and like, I'll never victim shame, but like where we are now, those people couldn't come into our lives.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't. But where we were before, they just walked right in.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is that layer. But the other thing that I was trying to say was that, like, when I realized that it wasn't me that was causing all of these problems, and I was like, this is a very wounded person who's not going to change. And this is them. I mean, that's a huge, like, those two realizations are such important pieces of information to be able to be like, I can heal now. I don't have questions about these two things anymore. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, that makes total sense. And it's funny because that was one of my biggest realizations too, was we internalize so much of their actions. Sorry, my fiance just got home, so my dog's about to go crazy for a minute. But we internalize so much of their actions that it was a reflection of our lack of worth or our lack of something. Like we weren't good enough, or we weren't, you know, sexy enough for them, or we weren't available enough, or we weren't fill in the blank. And the reality that I had, it's very similar to yours, was that there was nothing that I could have done to prevent his actions, because it's a reflection of him. Like, I'm not saying that I'm a perfect partner, but I'm a pretty darn good catch. Like, I've got 3 great kids. You know, I'm in grad school. I'm gonna have doctor in front of my name. I have a great family. Like, I'm a pretty good package deal. I'm not perfect. You know, you can ask my fiance. He just got home. I know I'm not perfect, but you know, but the reality is that I could have been perfect, and all of this still would have happened, because it's not the fact that I wasn't enough. It's the fact that nothing was ever enough for him, you know, and that normalcy and healthy dynamics and, you know, dealing with issues, like he wasn't capable of any of that. And that has absolutely nothing to do with me. And the other realization that I had was, it was kind of it wasn't necessarily, I guess it was kind of a lesson that I learned, that for me to not do anymore, because I tend to do this. And if you want to call it empathy or whatever, but I I tend to absorb other people's problems as my own. Like, and I want to either like fix the problem, or I want to just like, give all the advice. And this has even been something I've had to work on as a dad. Like, sometimes my kids don't need me to fix their feelings. They just need me to allow them to feel their feelings and give them a safe space to process the feelings. But with him, it was, all of his traumas and everything that he went through, and all of, like, I wanted to fix that brokenness. Like, I wanted to be the one that's like, oh, if I can just love him well enough, this will get better. If I can just be that good example of a healthy relationship, this will all get better. And it made me realize that the only mental health that I'm responsible for is my own. And I'm not responsible for anybody else's mental health. And I also can't change anybody. I'm not that powerful. I don't have the power to change anyone, as much as I would like to. And I'm not that talented. I'm not that gifted. And even if you go to therapy and all that stuff, therapists and all of that, nobody is that talented. Therapists and counselors and all that, all they do is they just give a safe space for someone to process and to make realizations. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the work comes from the individual, not anybody else. And sometimes the best thing to do for someone and for yourself is just to walk away. And it takes me a long time before I walk away, until it's to the point where it's like literally wounding me. So it's a huge lesson.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah, a hard one learned, unfortunately.
Yeah. What's up, buddy? The kiddo's back. Mildly distracting. What's up, buddy? How about I move it out when I'm all done with this call?
No.
Are you going to sit in here with me? I thought you were helping Daddy cook.
No, I wasn't.
He wasn't. He wasn't helping.
I tell you what, I have, how old's your son, if you don't mind me asking?
He's going to be 5 in like 13 days.
Yeah, my youngest is about to turn 4. My middle child, he just turned 7. And then my oldest, he is about to turn 9. And I will tell you what, my youngest, like, he challenges me more than the other two combined. Like, he is so dadgum hard-headed and so stubborn, and a master negotiator already at 3.
Oh,
I'm
like
just like,
that.
oh my God, we're in so much trouble with this one.
Go on, buddy. I'll be out soon, okay? And then we'll pull my bed out. His dad realized he was missing and came to get him. And he said, no. This is the thing, I used to apologize, like when I would be doing lives. I was like, "Oh, sorry, my kid's here." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to apologize for my kid being here."
No,
I have had one time I was like recording a podcast and he came in and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll see you soon." And he came back in and I was like, "And we're done." Because you know what? Sometimes you just
sometimes you just gotta stop. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. When I do like coaching calls and stuff, and their kids walk in, everybody's always like, "I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Please don't apologize for being a mom. Like, please don't apologize for being a parent. Like, it just is what it is."
And don't apologize about coaching as well. Like, don't apologize for your dog, your cat, someone knocking on the doorbell, or knocking on the doorbell.
Knocking on the doorbell. Yeah.
I need some sleep.
Yeah, if you're apologizing for knocking on the doorbell, I'm not qualified to be your coach. Like, you need someone better than me. You're beyond my scope of practice.
Yeah, honestly.
I do apologize about my dog a lot. That one I feel bad about. I don't know why. I'm just like, she's so distracting. You could probably hear her at the moment.
I don't know. I don't like when my dogs bark. I'm like, ugh, because mine don't like immediately. You know how some dogs you're like, I don't know what command or whatever you tell them to like stop barking, and they're like, okay, got it. But you know how like the dog will like they'll kind of just like a minute too long, and you're like,
yeah, they just don't stop. Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Oh man.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for us? Sorry.
Oh yeah, good call. No, you're good. Someone asked on YouTube, I don't know if you saw that, did he abuse you? No, this person did. Oh, I don't know if you're asking about my son's dad who is in the other room. No, he's my co-parent. This is another thing about Trey and I, which we like have just in common, is that our previous marriages that we were in, we do not like, you will almost never hear me say ex-husband and you don't say ex-wife.
I don't say ex-wife.
I say either my son's dad or my co-parent or something like that. We get along really well with them. We literally raise our children together, although I live with mine just because of our situation. It makes it a lot easier for both of us in a lot of ways, although it's not perfect. You do not. But I imagine that you probably could if you had to or wanted to, because
so it's funny because in my situation with school, like I have this like 1-bedroom apartment out like by where my campus is, and I've been here since I started. And I'm so looking forward to getting a house again this summer. But because of that, this apartment is just for school. So like again, I have 3 kids, so they have been over here and they've spent the night here and that kind of stuff. But when I have them like for like in my weekends and that kind of stuff, I go to my parents' house. But we have like 50-50 custody. But because of school, like it's full time on campus, the days have had to be adjusted. But one day a week, I actually stay the night at my kid's mom's house, and that way I can like take them to school, and it's not a long drive for them, so I don't have to get up earlier and all of that. But like I'll go the night before. They have this whole like area set up for me, and then take them to school. And my youngest isn't in school, so we like have the whole day together. Pick the kids up, then we play for a couple hours, and then I head back out. But and it's so funny to me, and I understand why people say this, because situations like mine and like yours, it's not the norm, and so people they always like turn their nose up at it. Like, and they do it a lot, especially with my kid's mom, where she gets a lot of flack for it. And it's like, how sad is it that people are almost like judging her for the fact that like we have such a good relationship still? Like, I understand it's not normal, but nothing about our situation is normal. Even with me being in grad school, like that's not normal. For a 32-year-old, with 3 kids and all of that, you don't see that all the time. But it's just, it's sad that we don't see enough co-parenting, and we see a lot of parallel parenting. That's sad that that's the norm. And it's also just sad that people like, I don't really get a hard time about it, but she does. And I'm just like, I just want to slap these people. So I'm just like, you should be encouraging this. Like, oh my gosh, that's so cool that y'all are able to do that. Or and we do get that, but it's just, she tells me some of the things that her coworkers say a lot. And I think, I don't know, this is just my theory. I think a lot of it just goes back to that stigma about like of dynamics of divorce. Again, the stigma when it comes to abuse is usually the man to the woman or whatever. A lot of times that's the stigma about divorce. Like the dude screwed up, or like in a way it was my fault, but it's just kind of like, it doesn't always have to be this vengeful type of situation. Like, we can be adults and sit down and figure out how to redefine our relationship for our kids. Like, we have a motivating factor. We want our kids to still see us as a unit. That's all that matters to us.
Yeah, same. I remember like when we first were talking about ending the marriage, and it was like people started telling both of us like immediately, like, you need to lawyer up. And he was out of the country, and I called him, and I remember being like, are people saying this to you? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, are we suing each other? Like, is this Mrs. Doubtfire? And we were both like, no, which is weird, because that is what we grew up seeing. Like, our parents were both divorced, and it wasn't necessarily kind, and it was just like, look, I remember my mom said to me, like, and of course my son's dad is not my abuser. It would be a different story if he was.
Oh, 100%. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. But she was like, you can't look at your son and not see his dad. Like, you both made this person. You would not have him without him. And I do hope she wouldn't say that again if he was my abuser. But if there's no abuse, like, that's the truth. Like, you made these humans, and like, we don't have to hate each other. And even if there was something that went wrong, okay, do your healing. And it doesn't have to be today. It doesn't have to be perfect tomorrow, but do whatever you can to not be toxic. Like, here's an example. When I told my son about like never seeing my abuser again, I did not say one bad thing about my abuser. I said, I asked for guidance, but I said something like, well, they were not able to be kind to us, and we were not in a safe. It's important for us to be around people who can treat us kindly with their our bodies and our hearts and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, but I was never like, well, they can't come back anymore, because, and this is a person who was very cruel to both of us. So I'm not perfect, but that's an example of like being able to like not be toxic about it and be like, this is an innocent child who, even if, again, like, even if that person did do something bad, you have the power to not turn this into Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. And I get questions all the time, like if my kid's mom is who I talk about on here, and I'm like, God, no. Like, it's just, because no, you're right. Like it's completely different when there's not abuse in the situation. Like when there's abuse in the situation, you do what you need to do. But yeah, it always blows my mind how similar stories are with that. I did get a good question, because I think a lot of people struggle with this. It says, weird triggers, when do they stop? It's been 6 months. I know for my take on this, a lesson I've learned with triggers is that triggers don't just go away. So when you try to, and a lot of times we get this like false sense of healing sometimes, but because we try to avoid triggers all the time, but avoiding them doesn't help you learn how to manage them. When it comes to triggers, it's learning about how to manage them. That's actually one of the things that I talk about in my course that I wrote, which is Breaking Free from Rumination. And it kind of teaches you how to see what the event was, what are my beliefs about this event, and then how did I act about that, and what we can work on. We can't really control events that happen in our life, but what we can control is what our thought patterns are around it. But that's the hard part, and that's the part that we kind of have to work on our own, because triggers are going to happen. I mean, now I would say I don't get triggered, but I still have memories. Like if I drive by the exit to the house that they lived in when I first met them, I'm probably not ever going to forget that was the exit, but it's no longer a trigger. It's just like, oh yeah, that was the exit. But I've learned the first time I drove past it, it was a weird trigger for me because it triggered all the good memories, not the bad ones, because that was when it was good. It was at the beginning. But I still had to learn how to manage that, because there's still a belief system even around those kind of triggers. So that it does get better, but it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't just get better with time. It gets better with strategies and putting those strategies in place over time. I don't know what your take is on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Exactly what you said about like, there, it's different now. It's more like a memory. I have a lot of memories where, again, it's like, you don't necessarily dwell on it. You don't necessarily, like, my heart rate doesn't go up or anything like that. I do have CPTSD. So for me, it's like sound or a visual or something that scares me. Like the other day I was like coming in the door and the neighbor's fence was like boom, and I like ran into the house, because it's like it's always at night too, like certain sounds and certain things, and I have a feeling that that's going to be there for a while, but I don't have like a trigger of like whatever those were before. But it has shifted to these. Before it would be like something negative, like someone would say something, maybe, I don't know, like a gaslighting comment on the internet, and I would get triggered, like, because gaslighting is so triggering for me. But now my triggers are when people are nice to me.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
so like when someone, like if I'm hanging out with someone and they like compliment me or they like do something kind, I'm like,
why?
Because, yeah, because for so long, like the good things were a trick. The good things, followed something bad or was right for something bad. And then I have been single this whole time. So not that many people get close to me. And so like, someone will whatever. And I'm just like, Just say thank you. Just say thank you. Like, don't be a weirdo. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I struggle with that a lot when I first started dating my fiance, because it was, I questioned everything that he did at first, and it makes you hyper vigilant, and it makes you wonder, like, okay, is this real, or is this am I just falling into this again? And ultimately it comes down to, what are they consistent at, and he was consistent with what he said and how he acted and how he treated me. So the really sucky thing about triggers is that it is one of those things where practice makes perfect. Like, you have to learn what your triggers are and how to manage them. That's a unfortunate truth, but it is. I think I saw a question on YouTube that was actually a pretty good one. Oh no, I just got
Which one do you want?
No, it just said my computer battery's low.
Oh, that's the one. You want to talk about
that? Yeah, that's the one. Did I click that accidentally, or did you? I don't know.
Is this the one?
That is the one. How would you describe the relief when you were able to be out of the situation? I'll be honest. For me, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like hell. Like, it was mental hell when I left. Like, yes, in a way I felt safer, and I felt like there was kind of like this like moment when he finally did leave, because I kicked him out. I mean, it was a very much like kind of a fight or flight, like get out of my house kind of situation. And in that moment, yes, there was the relief that was there. It was hell, like, just having to understand. Because for my instance, I was finding out all this information about him and what he was doing behind my back for weeks to come. So it just was like hit after hit after hit after hit. So the initial relief didn't last very long for me. And then all the work really started after I kept distracting myself for about 2 months, just because I couldn't deal with it all. And then when I finally sat down, I was like, hey, I gotta just start working on this. But yeah, that was what it was for my situation. Relief lasted very, very short.
I think my relief didn't come for several months. And my dear friend Kat is in here, so she like was along for the whole ride. But when I first left, I for sure, and I don't know if I ever said this out loud to anyone, I didn't trust myself. Even like as I was breaking the trauma bond and I could feel it getting easier, like each day that I was like no contact with them, I still didn't really trust myself. While I was in Indiana, like, if you don't know, like, the nutshell timeline was that I left Washington, was in Indiana with my family for like a month, and then I went to Europe. I did a Europe trip with my son. And I think when I went to Europe, I felt like, okay, I'm really not going back now. Like, this is an unparalleled level of freedom. I didn't know I could do this. There's no way I can go back. Like, I'm in Europe. Like, what? Yeah. But I still had, we were still on a lease together in a house. I was waiting for them to move out. I had someone that was trying to get my dogs back from them. All my stuff was in the house. There was still these, and they were still emailing me. Like, I was like in Spain trying to enjoy like these friends I hadn't seen in 4 or 5 years. They had never met my son. And I would get this email and I would just be like triggered AF. And it would just be like, do you want the nightstand or the desk? Like, they were just trying to get me to respond. And I didn't block them I blocked them on social media, but I didn't realize that you could block on like email and text and all that stuff until, actually, to be honest, and I don't think I've ever said this out loud to anyone except maybe my friend Landon, but I was like, I need to know if they're reaching out to me because they're still in the house and they still have my stuff. I didn't. So and I think a lot of people have that. I need to know if they're emailing me or not. You don't.
Mm-mm. You don't. Because there's always a reason. Like,
What's that?
it's never, there's always a reason that they're trying to contact you. It's still manipulated. It's still manipulation based. It's not the purity that we're wanting it to be. It's not for why we are wanting to know. It's because there's a motive. Because I was the same. I stayed in contact with him for somewhere between 4 and 5 months after we broke up, and it was the same thing. I had him blocked on all my social medias first, and then it was like a done deal. And I used the excuse of, because he was paying me money every month for money that he owed me, and that was the excuse that I used. But really, at the end of the day, the money wasn't worth it. But I also knew I wasn't ready. I knew it was what I should do, and everyone was telling me, this is something that you need to do, and they were right, and I knew they were right, but I had to be able to make that decision on my own. And it took me a little while. But man, by the time I did it, I was so done. I was just so fed up of watching them, because as I'm watching the manipulation, it's because I'm able to see what it was, because I was learning about this at the same time, because I had never really known what narcissism was or what emotional abuse looked like. So as I started to learn about it, and then I'm now watching it with this, like, we're trying to be friends shift, and it was, we'll just say it never stopped. The manipulation never stopped. And I just was so disgusted with him by the time I went no contact that I was like, I didn't even tell him. I didn't even say a word. I just went ghost. I was like, I don't need this last payment. It is not worth it. I was just done.
Yeah. But sometimes it's really sad that is quite often how it goes. Because, like, you said the word, like, you were like, we want their reasons for reaching out to be pure, and we want to, like, oh, he's paying me back, or, oh, they're asking me what. It was weird, though, because I never responded, but I would, like, get the email and be like, no, like, like,
yeah.
I don't want the desk. I don't want anything. Like, I was still, like, tormenting myself without even. But once I was back and cleared out the house, that's when I was like, all right, bye. And then never look back. But, like, sometimes you just need that extra layer on the cake of, like, toxicity, and then but the, like, continue to be removed from it, that you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, whoa, because it is really hard to see it. It's very hard to see it when you're still, if they have contact with you, even if it's just a text, hey, I miss you, or hey, how are you? Your brain still has that ability to dip back and start the spiral again.
Oh, for sure.
And to keep that fog, even if it's just a really light fog, the fog is still there.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, I just kept trying to I was really shielding myself from just accepting him for really who he was. I kept trying to say, like, things like, oh, well, there's a good guy deep down in there. There's not. Like, there wasn't. Like, a good person doesn't constantly manipulate you or gaslight you or cheat on you or make you or blame you for everything and shift the blame to you. And they're one person in public and one person behind closed doors. Like, good people don't do that. But not being able to, but accepting that this person was nothing that I thought that he was an incredibly painful acceptance. So, it's hard. I think, I'm sorry, I know people are, like, trying to be concerned. She's getting comments on YouTube like, was he your abuser? Y'all, why would she be going live with her abuser? I'm sorry. I shouldn't be laughing because I know they're just trying to make sure you're safe, but, like, it's not the situation.
I know. I just, like, I don't understand. Like, several people ask that, and, like, no offense, everybody, but, like, yeah, like, Trey and I are here educating about abuse.
We're both abuse survivors, and no, we did not abuse each other. Like,
no, we did not. We have only met in person one time. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And neither of us have contact with our abuser. Neither of us, like, I don't know. Can you just, I guess maybe there's someone out there who would do this, but can you imagine, like, both of us building this platform, trying to help other people, but then, like, hanging out with our abuser? Like, that.
Oh my God. One of my last TikToks that I had someone ask me, "Have you thought about interviewing your abuser?" And I literally was like, I've never been this direct with somebody on Alpine before, but I was like, absolutely not. I was like, why would you even ask me that question? Like, it actually like offended me. I was like, no, like, I plan on never seeing this individual ever again in my life.
Ever again.
So no, I'm not interested in interviewing him to get his perspective on anything. Like, I was
Can you
gassed.
imagine the circus? Like,
oh my God.
the questions that you would be asking of an abusive
Ugh.
person.
Yeah.
Immediately they would be like, I never did that. Like, you're making this up. Like,
like, no, it's just not. It is not. Nope, not even a little remotely interested in doing that. I actually, I talked to my kid's mom not that long ago, and I asked her if she would be willing to let me interview her, because I don't know if you experienced this, but there was a lot of enmeshment also with her in this situation where he was love bombing the crap out of my kid's mom and trying to win her over. And there was whole conversations that were going on between the two of them. And then he would come back to me and completely tell a different side of the story to paint her out as this villain. And he was actively trying to drive a wedge between me and my kid's mom. And I didn't know a lot of this until recently. And I asked her, I was like, would you be willing to like let me interview on this stuff? And she said yes. So now we just have to find a time to do it. But I feel like that because it was very interesting. There's a whole different perspective that I didn't even know about going on the back end.
yeah, I experienced that as well, although not as like mine wasn't like wooing my son's dad, but the day we broke up, I think I actually did a podcast episode about this. We broke up and we came back home because we lived together, and my son was at our house hanging out with our son, right? So like we could go on this like breakup date. And we came home and he was outside. He like made a fire, and like they went outside and they were like, hey, you want a beer? Like, hey, do you want a cigar? Like bonding with him. And I was inside, and I eventually heard them like asking him questions, sort of trying to like triangulate him against me. And I came outside and I was like, this is so bleeped up. I can't believe what, like, I could so clearly see what they were doing. And that's like a very real thing. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter who it is that you're close to. It could be a parent, it could be a sibling, it could be your best friend, it could be your children's other parent. They will see that person as another person to try to convince that you're crazy. And if
they see them as a threat, like, because they're a threat to their facade, because other people always catch on to it before the people in the relationship. They're a threat. Like that's why they want a wedge. 100%.
Yeah.
So yeah. It is. So I'm interested to sit down and have that interview and that talk with her, because we don't talk about it a whole lot. Like obviously she knows what I do, but it was just as traumatizing for her as it was for me. And I mean, she was very distant with my fiance when we first started dating, because it was just kind of like when I went through this hypervigilance stage when I started to date him. She went through a very arm's distance because it was the exact opposite for her. I mean, her and my abusive ex were like best friends for the first 3 months. And to me, it was like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, we're going to all co-parent together and blah, blah, blah. And she went through just as much gaslighting and betrayal and really abuse from him too. Not just as much, obviously, because she wasn't in a relationship with him, but she went through it as well. So she had her own, essentially, PTSD from it. And it took her a very long time to open up with my fiance now. So they're just like a natural disaster. I mean, if you're in their path and for whatever reason you are a threat to them in some way, form, or fashion, they are going to do whatever they need to do.
Yeah. I wanted to add to that when you are in this situation where, and again, we do have like semi-unique situations because not everyone is going to have that close relationship with a co-parent. But when you have that other person around and you are being abused, and then your kids are there and you are being abused, they are all being abused as well. Like they're being manipulated, they're being targeted. Like my child was often the source of their complaints. Like he was ruining our relationship, he was ruining our lives. My son's dad was ruining our lives, this and that, everything. Those people are I follow someone on TikTok who does a lot about like kids and animals, which is one of the things that I try to talk about a lot. Those, they're being abused too. Because a lot of people are like, I was abused, but like they never abused my child. Yes, they did. Because if that parent, you are not present because you're just constantly walking on eggshells, you're doing all this stuff. The co-parent is like, this isn't, I don't know this person. Like, what's going on here? It's constant. And the other person doesn't know. Like my son's dad and I have talked about, like, because he didn't necessarily understand at first, but I would start to like sort of educate him. I was like, if you want to know what Adler and I went through, and he was like, okay. And then he started to say things like, yeah, like we would show up and like you never knew what mood they were going to be in. Were they going to be happy and present, or were they going to be lurking in the background? He would say like a lot of times he would come over and he could like taste the tension in the air. Like the other person and the kids are also being abused.
Yeah. And even if you struggle with that word, like if you they didn't necessarily get abused like you did, it doesn't mean they're not affected. Like they're 100% affected by what's going on in your relationship. Because it was kind of different for me, where he was actually his best when the kids were around. Like that's part of what was hard for me, because again, we have 50-50, right? So I have them for 3 or 4 days a week. She has them for 3 or 4 days a week. The best was when the kids were there. We had like our whole routine. He would help take them to school. Like he, was very helpful and was very present for the most part. Like, he would only work his shift. If the kids were there, he would maybe sometimes stay later if they weren't. But when I started to see things get different when the kids were around, that's when all of the radars were going up, because all of a sudden he's working longer. He never did that when it was our day with the kids. He started to have a little bit more rage episodes with not nearly what it would be like when they weren't around, but he was starting to show his anger at me in front of the kids, which he did not used to do, because that was a pretty hard boundary for me. And all this is happening within the last 2 months, really. The last couple months of the relationship. But that was part of what kept me, was because that was what was showing me that there was this good person there. Because, in my mind, it was great when the kids were around. Looking back, I still wouldn't say it was necessarily bad when the kids were around. I think a lot of the issues were just like he just hadn't been around young kids a lot. And that's normal. People are going to have a learning curve when they're trying to learn how to become a parent, when there's already essentially a child, not a baby, that's there, and you're stepping in, having to learn the kid. There's a curve to that. But I used to say that all the time. Well, he's not great to me, but he's always really good with the kids. Overall, I still stand by that ish, but that doesn't mean that my kids weren't affected by what was going on. They were highly affected.
Oh, for sure.
100%. Because they still saw enough where I was able to give examples when I said, we're not going to see him anymore, like the conversation you had. I was able to be like, well, do you remember when this happened? Yes. Well, do you remember when this happened? Yes. Well, family doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the fact I'm able to give examples means they were affected.
Yes. Yes, I totally agree with you. Someone said on Facebook, it's by proxy, because they saw their parent being abused, and that's a really great.
It's a great way to put it.
Really great way to put it.
Yeah. Well, I only have 2% of battery on my computer, so unfortunately, I'm like being forced to wrap this up.
Well, I am being.
It sounds like you're being bombarded.
Yeah.
In a great way.
The door is now open. The door has been opened. We cannot go back at this
We can't
point,
go back.
So.
Well, just a reminder for everybody, Lindsay and I are starting our support group for the queer community, for abuse survivors in the queer community. Our first meeting is the 21st of this month. The registration for that can be found in the link in both of our bios on all of our platforms. We're only taking a max of 15 people, and I think we only have about 10 spots left right now. We're keeping it kind of small. just so that way people have time to share. We're not there for like 6 hours. So we want people to have the space and time to share if they want to. So that's why we're doing that. We both also have a ton of resources in the link of our bio. We've got a lot of I got book recommendations, and Lindsay has her podcast, and there's tons of stuff in both links in our bio. So please make sure you check those out if you feel like you just don't know where to start, or you just feel stuck in a rut in your healing. Just check it out. Something may speak to you, and we're here to help in any way that we can.
Yes, and one more thing to anyone who commented that we like didn't respond to or anything. Like if you were on my TikTok, I saw you. I read your comment. We had a really great conversation. So I just didn't want anyone to feel ignored.
Same back. Yeah, same on mine. Yeah. It's hard when you're when you're doing a co-live to like respond to all the comments because like they come in and you don't want to interrupt them. It's a weird dynamic. So we do see you. We do appreciate all support. 100%.
Yes.
But outside of that, thank you for coming on live with me tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the 21st. And I hope that you have a great rest of your evening.
Yeah.
And I hope all y'all do too. Almost did a disaster. We're going to stop this while we're ahead.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
All right. Y'all have a great night.